evening to we'd like to welcome, there we go. Welcome everyone this evening to Mapleton City Council meeting on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. We'll begin with an invocation by Councilman Lundberg, and then we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Minor, who's in the audience.
Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this night with thankfulness in our hearts for the beautiful community we live in, for the neighbors and friends that we enjoy, and for the opportunity we have to serve in the city and make decisions. We ask Thy blessing upon us that as we consider those items on the agenda tonight, we will consider and make the decisions in the best interest of our community and for our residents. We ask a blessing upon all members of our community and family and friends that may be in need of Thy blessing. Protect them. And these things we pray and thank Thee for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and repeat the pledge after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We will move forward now with our consent agenda items. There's no one signed up for public forum. One of the items, number 2, was sent out earlier today, a little bit late, and got it earlier today. It was fairly quick read, so hopefully you had a chance to read that. We'll see if there's any questions. If not, we'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We pulled that one from the agenda today. Because, no.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that also. Yeah.
That's why we pulled it.
Okay, that's right. I've been too busy taking my email.
So it's items 1, 2, 4, and 5.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1, 3, 4, and 5.
No, 1, 2.
Oh, 1,
2.
1, 2, 4, and 5.
I second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilman Garrett.
Carlson, yes.
Egbert, yes.
Garrett, yes.
Jones, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Great. We'll move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing item. It's consideration of an ordinance vacating vacating approximately 19,000 square feet of undeveloped right-of-way at approximately 1200 South and 800 West. And we'll turn it over to Mr. Conroy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So back in 1991, this home was issued a building permit, and as part of the condition of approval, they were required to dedicate a strip of land that eventually was supposed to be the right-of-way for 12th South. Fast forward now 30 years where we've got 12th South built on both sides. The right-of-way area is out of alignment, and that area would not function for the connection of 12th South. And so the proposal is to vacate that. Part of the reason that the neighbor came to us some time ago, and one of the reasons they're trying to get this cleaned up is their fence line is actually located right here, and it overlaps with the neighbor to the south. And so they're trying to do a fence line agreement to resolve that, that fence line issue, but they can't because the city's right-of-way is in between it. And so as we've looked at this as a staff, there's really no need for us to have this right-of-way at this time because it's out of alignment. If and when either of these two properties develop, 12th South will get built in the correct alignment. And so there's, from that perspective, staff is supportive of the request.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions for Sean before we open it for a public hearing?
I assume there's no cash transaction or any money transfer when that was given to the city?
Correct. And the applicant, in this case, the property owner, will take care of all the title work and the deed descriptions in order to do that. Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a public.
So that was my only question. somewhat, there's no way that in the future, we would need anything from that particular owner, because I thought that looked like, even though it's off-center there, that there's no way that any portion of what will necessarily be the new 12th South alignment would come from this landowner?
Yeah, if you can see, the center line really is where the fence line is now. And where that right-of-way is basically where the curb and gutter would be. And so, if there is some area, depending on the final design, when a subdivision is proposed, they'll have to dedicate that anyway at the time of the development of that. That's why we didn't want to have them leave a 1 foot or a 2 foot strip, not knowing exactly what that right-of-way may be until such time as somebody's ready to develop.
And who owns the property there to where the fence, on the other side of the fence there?
That's the Jared Young's, yep,
Okay. Because he's not gonna develop that, likely.
right. And this property owner is probably not either at this point, but
Yeah, so that was the only question, is that if he never develops that, but then ultimately we wanna put that 12th South through there. We're gonna need to negotiate.
yeah, they'll need to work together, or at least with shifting it, that center line, if it was here, you could still do the 1/2+7 on their side and get at least half the width road in, whereas now you couldn't do that because it just wouldn't connect anywhere.
Why was it misaligned, or why didn't it go up against the property line?
Back in the 90s, I don't,
Nobody knows.
yeah,
Stephen did that in 7th grade.
it was his first internship.
We'll still blame him.
I just thought he got his coordinates wrong.
I figured we'd be driving on the left and we'd need that.
Yes. Yeah, that actually is the problem.
Which direction?
All right, this being a public hearing item, we'll open it now for public comment. If you'd like to speak to this item, come forward. Seeing there no one, we'll close the public hearing and ask the council for a motion.
I'll make a motion to vacate approximately 19,000 square feet of undeveloped right-of-way at approximately 12 South and 800 West.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilman Lundberg.
Egbert, yes.
Garrett, yes.
Jones, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Carlson, yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. We'll move on to our discussion item, which is item number 7, a discussion item regarding a request to convert an existing retention basin into a residential lot located approximately 600 West Look Point Drive in the Triple Crown subdivision. Sean.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So back in 2005, the city council approved a TDR overlay for the Triple Crown Plat A subdivision. They were originally proposing 39 lots, but because of some density concerns raised during the public hearings and with the council, they reduced that and approved 35 lots. The subdivision included 2 detention basins, One was an acre and the other's about a half an acre. Both retention basins on the subdivision plat were dedicated to the homeowners association to maintain. In 2006, the plat was amended to add 11 more lots on 11 additional acres for a total of 46 that's there now. The applicants are requesting to replace one of the detention basins with a residential lot. Their primary reasons for this is, one, that the detention basins do not have water in it, and so they're, in their mind, is unnecessary. And the second is the HOA really is not functioning, and so they're not being maintained, and they're, in their view, an eyesore to the community. This is the aerial of the, if you look on the back, sorry, it's pretty dark on that back screen, but this is the 1 acre detention basin at would be the northeast corner of the development. The half acre detention basin is right across the street. This is a picture of the basin as it currently sits. And then this was the subdivision plat showing that's the one they're proposing to replace with a lot, and then this is the other basin. As far as density considerations, as you recall, earlier this year, we amended the TDR ordinance to reduce the amount of density that you could achieve through TDRs. You used to be able to fully double your density. Now you can no more than increase by 50%. And so based on the current TDR standards, Triple Crown is already over the density allowances based on the revised adopted code. And so if the council was supportive of this in some way, most likely we would need to propose some type of ordinance amendment that would make that possible. This is just kind of a summary. The base density based on the current ordinance is about 28 lots, so you could increase up to 42 with TDRs. They're already at 46, and they're looking to go to 47. As far as the detention basin, we've been doing some investigations on the system, and it looks like the reason that there is not water in those basins is because the system is not functioning as it was originally designed. There was supposed to be a plate that would basically divert water into these basins during stormwater events that aren't there, and so the stormwater is just flowing out of the site into a storm system that extends towards the north. We can get into that if you have any more questions on it, but the important thing is if the council decides to allow something to change here, we would just need some additional engineering to ensure that the basins are either unnecessary or that what they have will function properly.
So I might be able to provide a little more context to maybe eliminate long discussion on this. So Mr. Minor, who's here present today, came to us and explained to us the situation here with one of the other individuals in his neighborhood who's acting as the treasurer of the HOA. And they said that these detention basins weren't used, or excuse me, never filled with water. So even if the council was okay with making a change or some type of variance or something here, or making a change to the ordinance to allow this to happen, there's still a lot of work that has to be done. Even just because you haven't seen water in the detention basin doesn't mean that it's not going to ever happen, right, engineers? So they're going to have to go back.
This
and they're
one
going to
probably.
In this case, probably not.
Well, yeah, you're probably right.
But only because the
Sure.
design wasn't done.
Yeah. So that's another issue. The design, it's actually not hooked up right. It's flowing past it. So even if we do something, there's still work that the homeowners there have agreed to go do, which is to go back and take the engineering and go through the engineering process to find out how much detention basins actually needed. If both of them are needed, or if one without the other is good enough, before we could actually do anything anyway. Now, this one, like Steven says, hasn't been used because it's diverted.
Does it divert into, because the Jeffers property is adjacent to this one, is that correct?
So
The Jeffers property would be to the west or north of this property? North, okay.
North.
yeah, so there's a system, there's only a few developments that are actually connected to a storm drain system that drain out of the city to the Holly Pond. This is one of them. But the issue is there was supposed to be a plate that would divert water when it was at high flows, high storms, into these basins. The plate is not there.
To
and
slow
so
the
the water
flow.
is just flowing through.
So it's like a backup area until the water flows.
So what's the unintended consequence down the road that it has not been diverted? Where does it end up, and how is it? Because obviously the intention was that it's diverted.
Well,
It is not being diverted, so
Yeah.
what is it actually, what's the consequence?
the intention, all the water eventually would go through it. The plate is just meant to meter it, essentially, so that it doesn't overflow the system downstream. So it's meant to push the water into the basins, and then over time, it slowly dissipates and goes back through the pipe.
So is it overflowing the
No.
ones downstream?
We haven't had that issue that we know of yet, but it doesn't mean it
was
would.
pretty close. It was pretty close when we had the big storms.
So would it be more beneficial to put the plates in and do it correctly in the first place, so we don't have the unintended consequences down the road? Or would a study be required to figure that out?
Well, that's why we want to look at some more engineering.
Okay.
Right now, we've got no evidence that suggests that we have major problems down the road, right?
Yeah.
We had that huge storm, which is bigger than anything we've ever seen before.
Right.
And it just about worked.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah,
But it was coming from all different places, so you can't just say it was because of that, right? So,
without more information, it's
Sure, that's
it's a
right.
chicken or the egg thing for me. I wouldn't support it becoming another lot unless we knew the information.
Yeah.
And the data's got to come before that decision.
I think the main question we wanted to find out is if the council's interested. I mean, if we amend an ordinance, ordinances apply to all TDR properties, and so whatever we do here could impact other locations. There may be other basins that people want to try to convert, or other open space, common areas that they want to. So you just need to be aware that an ordinance change would affect more than just this site. So for us, we want to just see, is there interest? If so, we could work on some potential ordinance language, have some engineering done, and then go through a formal process. I think they just are interested in finding out, is this even
Are there,
yeah,
are there other options that have been explored? Park space, something that can be maintained?
Obviously it's an HOA property, so they have the ability to do that. You could ask the owner what the applicants, what their position is.
To add to those comments, the main thing the homeowners are looking at is they don't want to go out and spend a substantial amount of money with engineering to come back and for the council to say, hey, we're not interested in the idea of even a lot being put there. So that's kind of the topic of this evening, and as the mayor hit on, certainly if the council agreed to allow a lot and have us go make some amendments there, they have some engineering to do, and we'll have to see what comes of that. But
There's another topic here that plays into this, and that is detention basins in general. And with the amount of landscape that goes into them, it takes a lot of water to keep them looking the right way. Otherwise, they just look like, like that one does. You don't water it, and that's what you end up with. So it becomes an eyesore rather than something that's supposed to look good and actually act like a detention basin. So that's another discussion that we need to have about future going forward. I received an email recently from someone saying, why on earth in today's world are we creating detention basins? We got to spray all this water on and use our water for this and that and resources when we could do underground storage, And I know you've implemented recently, Stephen, our tanks and different underground storage under the sumps and stuff. So we're moving that direction, but there was some that were approved back then that have this issue. So there's also a pro of getting rid of the detention basin if in fact it's not needed, and prove that it's not needed, to be able to create something different that could look better and not use as much resource just to.
Well, and I think that speaks to Sean's bigger, broader view of an ordinance. And on this specific issue, I think I'm very open to learning more about the impact. I'm interested in hearing from the neighbors of this property as well. But moving forward, there's a few basins at Harvest Park, postage stamps that would very possibly be potentially candidates for becoming lots. And so I think that speaks to the broader topic. Should we be moving away from drainage basins?
I agree with both of those. I had a conversation with Corey recently about the detention swamp right behind the Spring Gardens, that if you peek over the fence, you see a swamp. And I would encourage you to look over the fence.
Oh, we saw the swamp before it was built.
Yeah, and it's a mosquito haven, there's a whole lot of implications with that. So I totally support Mayor's suggestion about looking at best practices in general with that, but also I think if there's opportunity to remediate some decisions or some things that were based on inaccurate data or inaccurate follow-through, I think that's a good opportunity. I mean, I'm just like you said, I think this is an opportunity to look at what's best practice and what's the good data on it, and I'd be willing to consider that being a lot if the evidence proves that it would be safe and no unintended consequences down the road.
So what is just so I'm clear, I mean, you started with the comment that the HOA is not functioning, but who is bringing this forward? Is it a representative of the HOA, or how much of the HOA participants are kind of
supposedly there's one participant left, Kyle Bateman, and he's brought the issue forward with Mr. Minor, so they're working together to get this resolved on behalf
There's
of them.
one participant in the HOA?
Pretty much.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And this is, from what I understand, it was this detention basin, and then there's some monument signs that were part of the HOA maintenance requirement. And the signs are on actually congruent with other property owners, so they're gonna maintain those, agree to maintain those, and fix the paperwork for those. And then this is the last piece left.
Oh, to really dissolve the
Yeah.
HOA.
And then the
effectively.
HOA is dissolved.
So that's the intent, is to dissolve the HOA.
Yeah, because it's not acting now anyway, and if those are the only requirements the HOA had, then just to dissolve the HOA and be done. And then the individual landowners have their
Yeah.
uses.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm generally in favor of looking to resolve what is otherwise a useless eyesore, but at the same time recognizing, you know, a lot there is probably worth 300-400 grand.
5.
Or 5 or whatever, and so from the perspective of, is there value to the city and implications this has with respect to modification of ordinances and application in other circumstances is something we're gonna have to take into consideration, but all those factors have to be evaluated.
Yeah, I'm amenable to looking at options, and even possibly amendments to the code, but the implications in the future citywide, are very problematic for me. It would have to be a very workable amendment for me to even consider it. And allowing it to be a building lot is something that I'm gonna have to be really strongly convinced to, just based on the idea that we as a city, as a general plan, our whole entire community is against more building lots. And so if there's some other option that we can do to this land, I think if you ask every citizen, 7 citizens out of 10 are gonna say, I'd rather see it in weeds than have a house built there. So that's where I'm coming from.
Can we hear from,
Gary, do you want to add anything? You're welcome to come up here and you state your name and then
Gary Minor.
just keep it to 30 minutes, would you?
No problem, no problem.
Well, I give you some time.
So I have no interest other than just trying to improve the situation. So
So you don't care if we put a skate park there?
We already told him we would.
Oh.
Dallas offered that, I
Oh,
said, no
okay.
problem, you want to change it? So the initial inquiry came because because it's abandoned, because it's just sitting there doing nothing. Neighborhood kids use it for their four-wheeler tracks and this, that, and the other, and some have been hurt, and now they're looking for, so it's a liability towards the neighborhood. That's where this initially came from, and I don't really have an interest. I'm not a member of the HOA. The HOA has not been functioning. I've been in that neighborhood for 11 years, and I have no axe to grind. I have no agenda other than just say, is the interest of the city to just leave it as is? And I just started asking questions. If it's not to leave it as is, then what are some options? Does the city want it? Does the city want it as a park and want to maintain it? No. That's kind of the answer I got. So this idea of a potential lot came just as, well, it's pretty logical. There's roads on both sides of it. There's a road to the east that runs past the Markov property that runs into, can you show the map again, please, Sean? Maybe that'd help just a little bit. So there is a road going east that would run into the Colin Allen property, and eventually will be developed sometime, someplace, somewhere. And then there's a road on the west side that runs north that would run right along, Scott, is it right down your property line? Yeah. And then there is a home on the north end of that property that the city council approved that is Colin Allen's daughter it's currently under construction. She did a 1-lot subdivision.
Where's that at?
On the north end, so. So if you went from the property that's outlined straight north, you'd run right into the back of that home that's being constructed. And so eventually there would, at least it's stubbed to be roads going east and going north. And so that was where the idea came from is, well, first of all, I had never seen the water. Sean and Public Works has been very cooperative to try and, why isn't there any water in this? And now it has come to light as of this week that there's the construction of the subdivision was never done. And we're not here to point a finger, but it was never done right. So therefore, that's why it's not functioning. So I understand completely that, well, let's figure that out. I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars in engineering unless there's at least the glimmer of hope to try and say, is there a better usage? Is there a better potential situation than the current one? That's why I'm here. That's why I have sought at least a general inquiry, is just what's a better solution than the current one?
Great. So the half acre is across the street to the west is the other detention basin. So you've got one on the east, one on the west.
Correct. And Sean, this is a question of inquiry to you. Were both detention ponds put in at the same time at the time of construction?
Yes. Well, when were they built at the same time? It's shown on the plat.
Well, so my research of the neighborhood, I'm not an original homeowner. I had nothing to do with the neighborhood when it was constructed. I subsequently bought in 2009 and built my home there.
Good timing.
Thank you. There's 11 acres across the street from my home, which is Triple Crown Drive, that was not a part of the original subdivision.
That's what this was.
And so Sean's referencing of 11 acres that was subsequently added a part of, my research says that the original 1 acre lot was for the original subdivision, which left out 11 acres right in the middle of the subdivision. And then another sibling came along, got his inheritance, and now the other siblings had paid all the money for the infrastructure improvements and said, great, I'm going to put my subdivision right here on my land. We won't get into those family dynamics. But the city required a subsequent half acre more, so that it was added on afterwards, was that half acre on the.
The original plat shows both basins.
So anyway, I don't really care. I don't have a strong opinion, but I'm willing to help on the engineering costs if it's going to be feasible, and that's why we're here.
Okay, great. Mr. Jeffers, do you have anything you want to add or any comments or anything? Since it's a discussion item, might as well. You took the time to come.
Well, I just, Scott
If-
Jeffers, till I can move to Texas and buy 1,000 acres. I'm stuck here.
Let's go.
It's my wife. So I was just, there is the two basins. One is probably, not even a half acre, the one to the west. And they are putting a fence there right now, and they got it surveyed, so about 8 feet of that is actually my property.
8 feet
Yeah.
of the half acre drainage basin?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I didn't know that till Clark had it surveyed and put the pins and had to move his fence further to the south.
That's 8 more feet alfalfa.
Yeah. A little bit more beef. But my whole thing is a water guy, and just the worry that I would have, the detention basin where you're going up Highway 89, where Tom, and you sodded that, just from that rain. The whole lay of this land is basically funneled to that. When Colin does subdivide, and it will happen, the whole drainage of this is going to have to need some type of a detention basin, or what we saw in St. George, or just this way.
Yeah.
That water in those basements was to the door jams, full of mud and water.
See, and that's my question, moving, not so much as it sits right now, if the world were to stay as it is right now.
Right.
But moving forward, when Colin's property develops, potentially when you develop, what does that
So what
ultimately
has to
mean?
happen, as you know, probably, is that every project that develops has to be able to retain its water, right? Its runoff, and they have to engineer it appropriately. And if they can't, it doesn't get built. And so, for example, if Colin Allen and/or someone buys Jeffers because he moves to Texas on 5,000 acres, then they want to subdivide it. They have to go through the engineering process and have to be able to retain the water or detain the water according to the 100-year storm or whatever we have. So that's not really where they have to add underground storage. They have to do whatever. They have to be able to do that, or it
Build a
doesn't
drainage
happen. So
basin.
one way or another, it's going to happen. And most of the time, that's not designed to handle the other 40, 50 acres around it.
No, I
And so-
agree. So if Colin would have to put his next to,
Yeah.
but I can take a shovel today. I can guarantee you we will hit water. in 7 feet. I promise you. If
So-
we dig a hole in that corner.
In
Oh,
that
okay,
basin,
you're saying there's
Groundwater
groundwater.
is that
Groundwater.
high.
in
Yes.
that basin area.
Oh, yeah.
So another issue is if you said, okay, that this is over-engineered, and you said, well, we want to leave the basins because we're going to take water off the Colin Allen property, off the hill. We're going to take water off, you know, the one above him, whichever one that one is, and we're going to feed it all there, and therefore it's going to be enough. Then you got another problem, because now who's going to maintain it? And now you've got 3 or 4 other new subdivisions, plus the subdivision Gary's in, plus the subdivision that's original HOA, and then how are you going to determine who maintains it, and who pays the water, and who cuts the lawn, and who trims the trees, and it's just another mess. And that's why it's important to design each one of those to be on their own, and then they're responsible for them. And if it's done right, then that's what happens.
Well, and I think what you say, if it's done right, I agree with you. It's clear, however, we've discovered even with this Triple Crown one, how many years later that drainage system wasn't done properly or not completed properly, right? So what does that take to fix that? I guess that comes from the engineering that may or may not be done by the HOA.
Sure, I mean, we could make this function the way it was intended really easily.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have the design, you just put the orifice plate in it, and
Okay.
it would do it.
It's literally
So
just a plate.
that solution's
It's
very
just a-
simple,
It's just a
okay.
missing orifice plate, that's it. So you've got a pipe this big, you put a plate on it and make a hole this big.
Okay.
And that just meters the water.
So why does it go down to the Holly subdivision if it should be contained by them?
It wasn't at the time. So this system was designed as detention, not retention. So detention just means it holds it for a while, lets it flow out slowly. It discharges into a ditch, goes into a pipe, runs down the highway, and then discharges into Big Hollow, I think. But now, the ordinance is that you have to retain everything on your property. So we don't allow detention basins anymore.
Okay,
So
I understand.
if we were to build this again, those basins might still exist, but that orifice plate pipe that lets it discharge would be gone, and these basins would hold all the water and let it percolate back into the ground.
So wouldn't it pay to put that orifice plate in for a year or so, just to see?
Yeah, but even if a year goes by and we don't get a 100-year storm, then you're basing it off of what? A year's worth of history. Either way, no matter what, the engineering's got to be done to tell us if that's needed, no matter what the storms do over the next 12 months.
Right. So from my perspective, honestly, the engineering is a really small part of this, because we can engineer this to work. I mean, there are solutions out there that we remove those basins, we put underground storage, right? We fix the orifice plate, we let it run into the ditch like it was supposed to, like it was originally intended to. I am 100% confident there is an engineered solution that's also not one that's incredibly costly. There's cost, but not one that's going to be cost prohibitive when you're sitting on a $500,000 lot, right? So engineering to me is a small piece. I think this is much more a question of an ordinance amendment, and is this something you want to do going forward? Are we trying to eliminate basins? And if that's the case, then we do the engineering, the solutions out there, and we build it.
My opinion is we eliminate them and do something different if we have this situation like the one that Simpson just did north of the cemetery where we leave 12 acres of open space. That's more like it. Instead of building a detention basin, expecting someone's going to water it, manicure it, and all that, and change it to underground storage, no one sees it, it's gone, it's done the right way, it's taken care of, it's retained, and move on.
Yeah.
We don't have this issue in the future, but this is one that we got to do something about. Either we got to decide that they're stuck with it and they got to figure it out, or we're going to come together and come up with an underground solution possibly, and by the sale of this property, you know, there's money, they could go and build it. and
So if it's
do
an
it
underground solution, where do you put it?
right there.
Underground?
And then sell the property, the lot?
Yeah, we
with
wouldn't
that
do
underneath
it.
the house?
Yeah, we wouldn't do it. The homeowners have to come together and do it.
I think, Ted,
So you want to build a house over a retention pond?
Oh, excuse me. No, it all goes in the right of way, and that's another thing that
That's all
engineered.
asphalt, though.
no, or the park strip area.
Park strip,
Yeah, I
that's
think
12
that
feet
the
outside.
points, yeah.
Or in the backyard, or in a lot. I mean, a lot of our, today, the retention basins that we have are on private property, they're in lots. And there's a maintenance agreement that goes along with that. We maintain the underground.
Okay.
The homeowner maintains the surface.
They put a lot of them in the park strips, it seems.
Park strips for the underground more than anything.
Is this just a high water table there?
Well, yeah, it is high water table, but what if you just use the one to the west?
Well, that's,
That little one, because that will never be enough for a house.
that could possibly,
It's not a half acre,
I think
guarantee
that's
you.
where the engineering will inform what the need is, whether this one's needed, that one's sufficient or not.
Or you have to have both of them.
that's right.
But the one, you just did one for, that Tom just finished, a great big retention basin,
Huge,
huge.
huge.
So, and now you're thinking just,
Well, see, the one you're talking about, that's supposed to be a public amenity for the development. It's an open space.
Yeah, so that one is a
field,
place where
it'll be
they
a
can
park.
actually have a park. You know, when you go into Spanish Fork, that one right before the railroad tracks, it's supposed to be that.
oh,
So they actually use it as a
I got you,
a park.
okay.
So Scott, it sounds like your primary concern is
Well, I'm just downwind, I'm downriver.
for the
So
water,
what
excess water.
happens again, I don't want to be the guy with mud and the insurance says,
Right.
deal with it yourself, which it probably
Are you
never
saying-
happened.
You saying you don't believe engineers? Mr. Jeffers?
Careful, Scott.
All that. So, I mean, I'm,
Okay,
No, I
great.
think, and
That's a
that,
good
I
concern.
think that underpins the concern of many of us that have spoken, is what really is the impact of making a change here, which the engineering is, that's the next step, right?
Oh, yes, but there's one, and the reason we're having the discussion item is to determine if we are wanting to look at that and do that. Otherwise, they're not going to spend $10,000,
You're right.
$15,000 to engineer
I'm,
something
I'm
new.
open to it, very open to it.
I think no matter what, we need to engineer it.
We need to fix it.
We need the
is what I'm
engineering
saying. I think
on
we
it,
need
no
to-
matter what. I have
I mean, yeah.
a greater question about how we enforce HOAs. I mean, that's another thing here.
That's a whole can of
Because
worms.
this, all the expenses related to this should be covered by the HOA. And that the HOA hasn't maintained this, at what point does that become, first of all, why haven't we required them to maintain it? Is it because they don't exist?
Well, it's
And
an
what
asset
do
of the HOA. This
Yeah.
is an asset
Personal
owned
property.
by the HOA.
But it's not following, the weeds are overgrown, they're
But-
against our
and that's the-
code. So how do we, and maybe this is, somebody can educate me, but I'm wondering, how do you get a HOA to behave? Or exist?
Well, I think speaking to the lot that's overgrown, I think that's a nuisance that the city could follow up on, but if, at that point, there's about 600 other pieces of property in the community that would fall under that, HOA or not. But essentially, it's a private property owned by the HOA, no different than my lot or your lot, essentially, right? But you don't, getting it.
If there's no person.
Well, that's where the HOA does, right, I get it. I
Like,
deal
if there
with, yeah.
literally isn't someone to contact to say, your weeds must be less than 6 inches, what authority do we have as a city? Who do you give a ticket to?
There's only one person, he said.
Yeah, that one, the treasurer,
One
see in the
member?
room? No. Okay, so I
It
think
it is it is a legal obligation
Yeah,
of the
that's-
HOA, which is the homeowners, whether there's an association with officers and directors and bylaws, that's irrelevant. It's a
Legal entity.
homeowner's obligation, and ultimately, it's back to the point of, the city doesn't go around saying, although some cities do, go around sending demand letters and legal threat letters to homeowners within an association that may or may not exist. So that's always an option, but it's not an option that, we generally want to take or like to take, but
in this situation, though, hopefully it's an anomaly, but we know there have been other HOA issues in our community. So anyhow, I bring this up because I'm really interested in how to avoid this complication of neighbors having to raise money when they may or may not have been part of the HOA that may or may not exist. I think it's just a really interesting situation. So I'm curious what our ultimate oversight is, our enforcement, and is there something that we should be doing more as a city to have on record who are the officers, or, I don't know that. So I'll leave that for a later conversation.
I could get our city attorney involved with that and have
Yeah,
him
I
put
don't-
a,
yeah, and we can have more discussion about that, but there's a lot of different ways we can address those things.
Just don't allow it.
I think the message is, we want to see a resolution of the problem. I like some of the ideas that have been heard with respect to the use of that other half-acre detention basin and whether that includes putting underground storage in there, and the costs associated with that would ultimately be borne by presumptively the proceeds from the improved use of this property. So I think there's probably some engineering, hopefully there's some engineering solutions that are not only beneficial to the city, but ultimately allow the value of all those homeowners around there to be improved when you get rid of an eyesore like this. So it's not only the value that would be received by the use of a lot or some other process, but it's the value that would be received by the homeowners in that area of eliminating an eyesore, or however that is eliminated, that increases the value of their home. So I think it's something that there needs to be a joint effort by the city, but the homeowners need to understand that this is to their benefit. Because it is their asset, and ultimately it's to their benefit in their homes when whatever we can do as a city to get that to be improved. I don't know if that helps in your business judgment analysis, but
The other issue is,
Here, because of what you just said, if the city is willing to allow something to improve,
they'll do
You
that.
have
we're not
support for it.
expecting any financial burden of the city whatsoever, relevant to, hey, you guys could do this. No, I understand that perfectly.
Right.
It's just.
Can we do it?
Comply with your city ordinances and/or the circumstances to make it work.
Right.
One of
And
the
they'll-
things, go ahead.
Sorry. And according to state law, in order to transfer common space, you need 67% of the homeowners. And so they're going to have to make sure that they've got that support,
But the
because there
county-
may be people that don't.
I'm sure you'll
The
have
don't
support.
The county, though, may require more to actually record it, possibly?
No, they'll
do
want
it?
That would be
67%.
So, one other thing that this you have is you say, okay, well then, the 1 acre's not needed on the east, so the west side is a half acre, and that's all it's needed. And then you ask the question, well then, now you have a half acre to take care of. Who's
no,
gonna take care of it?
that's what I'm saying.
At the same time, when I was leaving, after visiting this property a couple weeks ago, and I was leaving there, someone was working with the neighbor's house to the west, and I don't know who it is, but they said that the neighbor there would be willing to purchase that property and maintain it and fence it as his backyard, which, there you go, that's a way for the HOA to then be out, and then this homeowner is responsible for maintaining it, mowing it, whatever.
And that ultimately is an HOA transaction.
Right.
That's
as they
something,
vacate
yeah,
the
that's,
HOA.
And I'm in
I'll be
favor,
part of this.
I'm majorly in favor of something, a solution more along the lines of that
Me
than
too.
I am of allowing this to be sold as a building lot.
Yeah, the problem with the HOA is perpetuated. If we can solve things with this and eliminate a dysfunctional situation across the board, I'd rather do that all at once, especially if an ordinance is required. That requires changes for both of those.
so let me say one more thing.
Just for clarification of that, though, the idea would still be to put a home on that.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to
No,
say. I wanted to
well-
say.
The fence change was only relative to the half acre retention.
Right.
Yes,
but-
that's
but-
right.
but
So
I-
the east
Right,
side,
but I want to be clear that I'm still not interested or even open to the idea of making that east side a building lot. It goes against our general plan, it goes against open space, it goes against preservation of our community, it goes against everything that we fight for all the time.
And I think that's the key question right now.
that
right?
is the question.
That's what
So
we-
if you're not interested in that, a building lot being there, then if I was sitting in Mr. Minor's shoes, I would not go spend $15,000 in engineering. Now, I agree with what Theron just said, that we got to make sure it fits within the general plan. If you look at the subdivision, according to the numbers that Sean posted, then the ordinances exist to maintain the open space that we want. And if they comply with that, then we're not going against the general plan, right?
Correct. If the adjacent landowner bought the half acre and the other adjacent landowner bought the 1 acre.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is that would still fit in our general plan. It would be open space preservation.
Gotcha. So in the general plan, there's zones and ordinances for those zones to have a certain amount of 2 acre, 1 acre, A2, RA1, based on the use of TDRs and not using TDRs. What I'm saying is that if they made that a building lot and made it in the calculation, and the calculation still met the zone of A2 with the use of TDRs and was still under the max density, then would you be okay with it being building lot? That's what I'm asking. Because that is maintaining the general plan, that is following the general plan, it is following all of our density discussions and things that we want. Because they're still under that max density. That's my question.
I didn't think they were under the maximum density.
Yeah, I thought,
I
Yeah,
thought
they're
this would
not,
put it
and
over.
that's,
I thought they were already over.
yeah.
But combined with the 11 acres,
Mhm.
you combine the 11 acres into it?
That's with that current ordinance that we just passed. The previous ordinance.
Okay, so now that's what I'm talking about. The previous, or the current ordinance, no, they don't. Because you only get 75% or 50% based on the ordinance.
But the
What I'm
grandfather-
saying,
But the time, but the
Previous
ordinance at
ordinance
the
they
time
do.
that
Yeah,
they developed this.
that's right. So the previous ordinance, it did fall within it. So without the one we passed, what, 3 months ago or
Yeah.
however long ago it was? It's still under that ordinance, and that's what I was saying. If that was the case, would you be willing to do it? And is it worth them going through headache to try and figure out if the engineering even works? Because it's possible it doesn't, but.
And one other point of clarification, Sean, go back to that map.
I'd be
I
more
think,
amenable to it, but not as amenable.
just to make sure on, so the basin to the west does have a home next to it, but that basin to the east, there is no homes on the
There's a
east
home
or the
right to
north.
south.
And there,
There's a south, but there's a,
that-
is that a
there's a
road
street there.
between it?
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
there's
a
a
road.
street between there, so.
So let me just put this out there. It's a discussion item. That's why we're here, but I don't want to leave anything unturned. So if we're not doing a residential lot there and the engineering can be engineered to not need it, what do you do with it?
Well, as an acre of open space, I mean, in principle, I understand where Theron's coming from, but in practice, open space of a non-maintained lot, HOA owned or anything, what does that serve? That serves no value to the community, to the neighborhood, to the HOA.
I disagree. I think
Okay.
I think there's huge value in open space,
Yes.
period. Weeds or not weeds.
1 acre of land that's in a corner of a subdivision, so what happens to it? What, like, to Dallas's, to the mayor's question, what happens to it?
It remains open space, and there's nothing that the city has to do with it from then on there. It's just open space.
So that was the reason for my question, saying, according to the ordinance, when this was developed, if it is still under the max density based under the ordinance and the general plan that we have, are we amenable to it being a building lot, or are we not? I know that today, currently, as of 3 months ago, it wouldn't.
Well, here's how I'm seeing it. I'm seeing that an error that happened in when was this originally
This
designed?
was actually 2000.
2005. Well, an error that happened in 2005, whether it be they did the flow of water incorrectly or they over-engineered it, is causing a consequence for the neighbors. If it hadn't been done incorrectly, that would have been a lot. So for me, normally I would be on the same page with keep it open space, but how this is designed with the roads running on both sides already, with the neighbors here who are currently paying the price for a very unsafe space that they've expressed, and with considering the historic issues, I perceive this really as an anomaly. So I am open to this becoming a building lot, pending the engineering data comes back and does not indicate any consequences that would negatively affect the existing neighbors. I love the idea, likewise, if the data comes back, I love the idea of the neighbor picking up the half-acre detention pond as well. So for me, this one is an anomaly. Normally, I would agree with Theron about keeping the spaces, but this is, it's just an anomaly with the unfortunate situation of when it was established.
Okay. Reed, what do you think?
Because this is changing, would it still go to Holly, or would they, if we decide to do this and put it underground, would it retain everything and not send anything to Holly?
I don't know, that's a really good question.
We don't know until it's designed.
Well, it's not just that, it's just if you're going to change the development now, are we under the current ordinances? If we are, then you've got to retain. You have to retain it.
I would think.
But if
They're
not,
Not
then,
adding roadways or.
yeah. I mean, you're certainly changing the drainage system. And so I think that's a decision you'd have to make. You'd have to to say which ordinance are we gonna use here?
But I guess that's my question, is what is in the best interest of the city from a retention and stormwater use? In other words, if in a hypothetical world where we had unlimited funds and we went in and we put underground storage in that half acre and put a beautiful, xeriscape lot on top of it that was, never needed to be maintained, and then would that, as something like that was engineered, would that be that retains the water, would that be in the best interest of the city and better than having a detention basin where the water's still going out and the uncertainty of what the Jeffers raised with respect to potential flooding in a 100-year storm or otherwise?
One of the things, the reason these are detention basins, at least based on the little bit of documentation I can read, is because the engineering study said that there were collapsible soils that would be impacted if you tried to retain it on site. And there were other soils that just wouldn't percolate. So that was part of the engineering discussion at the time, was there could be problems if you're trying to percolate it. Now that was, I don't know the extent of the story. I don't think we've got the original documents, right? All of that one.
Yeah, and
But that's just it. If the engineer comes back and says, we can detain and use the half acre and have an orifice plate which slows the detention, and then that's great. Because the homeowner's willing to take the half acre, take care of it, and then this becomes, according to what the council decides, something else.
Yeah, and that's where I say I have concerns that it's doable, because you said there's this, dig a hole 7 feet deep and you got, you're already hitting in groundwater. So my concern is that it's doable to where we think, I'd love it to work, but that's my concern, is that it doesn't work. But I'm kind of in line with the idea that there needs to be some form of remedy here that is not only, I think it's in the best interest of the city, it's in the best interest of the homeowners around there to do something different. And if that ultimately, the only way to do that is by way of a building lot, I'm prepared to go to that point, because from my perspective, we do have the right to go out and have our attorneys draft a demand letter to the homeowners and demand that they remedy the problem, and they do that, and we spend a bunch of money, and then we get in a bunch of litigation. I don't want to go down that route, even though that is a possibility the city could go down. I don't think that's the way we resolve this issue, though.
Okay. Great. Did you?
I've said my
You already
piece.
said your-
I'm very open to exploring it.
Okay, you saw the expression of the council, loud and clear. Thanks for bringing this forward.
I think we need some data.
That's right. Okay. Thanks, Gary, for being willing to come forward and try and resolve this. Yep. All right, we'll move on to administrative reports. Start with Mr. Conroy.
Nothing for me.
Mr. Lord.
Nothing.
Wow. Chief.
Yeah, you're not getting off that easy. A couple things from the fire department. You turn the lights on. Is it on now?
Yes.
A couple things from the fire department side. They posted their opening that was approved. They've got their candidate and they've made an offer. He's got a little medical issue he's dealing with for a couple weeks, but he's going to start on December 1st. So that process is done. Very experienced guy, he's been around for a little while. And,
Excellent.
I don't want to take Chief Glasgow's thunder. I'll let him introduce you, but that's done down the road. Another thing we're going to have to deal with is two of our volunteers that are just give a ton of time. Got their mission call yesterday, and they're going to be leaving pretty soon. John and Gail Higgins will be leaving, so that's a big gap. I mean, good for them. I get it, but man, that leaves us a lot of hours to fill. Was it Romania?
Yeah.
You remember?
Yes.
Cool.
Romania.
So, and then on the police department side, we're having some trouble with kids kicking in fences, vinyl fences. So we sent officers this past weekend using unmarked cars around. They're tough to catch. I mean, that's a split-second crime, but we're seeing that all over town. The TikTok thing that you hear about on the news, it may or may not be related to that, but we kind of suspect that it is. So that's where we're at with that. So we'll keep following up on that, and that's all I have for you. So.
Thanks, Chief. All right, Reed.
Camille, do you have some of those, that few slides. I thought I'd show you some slides of the architectural rendering of the new solid waste facility.
We can look at that too.
That's gonna be.
Wow, that's gonna be there
the
too?
entrance. Yeah.
And we don't have to pay for it. The county, it's on the county property.
Now, this is kind of on the office side of it, but you'll see it's quite obvious from the rest of them that this is 100% contained. Everything, all the dumping, all the storage, everything will be inside. There won't be any outside piles or anything. Everything will be inside. And inside there will be this is kind of a big conference room, but it's also for tours, not to go in the facility, but to view what's going on. That can be for schools and for other things, for education, so they're not down
Birthday
amongst it, but they
parties.
can see what's going on.
Right, if you want to have your birthday party there, you can.
That's exactly right.
Pizza.
Great multifunction room. Yeah, I was thinking our next city council retreat
Bring
might
your
be nice
garbage
there.
and just leave it there.
Gymnastics classes.
This will be the entrance place for people driving to the facility and when they need skills, et cetera. And you can go to the next one. There's just another view with, well, all the doors with them shut. And the next one, you can see another side of the building and the storage area. So that just gives you an idea of what the plan is for right now. Construction's really already started there. So, and we should have the last estimate for 90% completion, probably, I'd say in the next week or so.
Sweet. Good job. Thanks, Reed. Jessica?
So that's it.
All right, great.
I attended my first board meeting for the Utah League of Cities and Towns this week, and then also the Public Policy Committee. And I've already talked to Chief a little bit about some of the topics, but the primary things that we talked about, affordable housing, how retail can be subsidized, what legislation the state is putting in place to control what cities can or cannot subsidize, like a big box, for example, not being able to subsidize anything for big boxes coming to town to decrease competition, which isn't as relevant to us. However, it depends on what they define. There's argument between, do they define it based on square footage of the retail establishment or based on purpose? And so that was a really interesting conversation.
Based on the name.
Correct.
Yeah, I was
Like
gonna
a
say,
TIF. Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, so for a TIF, so a city can only have so many tools to lure a business in. So that's what they're talking about passing now and how that'll look, and so the league is heavily involved in those definitions. With that, there was a good conversation about the city rights for placemaking. So you can imagine I'm in the room with Mayor Mendenhall. She's talking about Salt Lake City, I'm talking about Mapleton, and I have an argument for placemaking, which is the word I haven't actually heard around, but it's your culture, and that's the word they're using on the Hill is placemaking. So do we have a right to define our vision and our general plan about what we want to be, and how are we complying with affordable housing in conjunction with what our needs are as a state, what they're trying to do on the Hill, and what we're trying to define as placemaking. So our culture, our open spaces, are we allowed to do that? So there's some really interesting dialogue on that. Public safety personnel came up, is what I talked to Chief about earlier. It does look like the 60-day retirement sort of, it's not a penalty, what's it called? The separation clause that will pass, which will make it easier that if we wanted to pick up retired officers to come work, it would be easier. However, that still doesn't increase the pipeline. And so there's some real serious conversation about how do we actually increase the pipeline of people who want to become public safety officers. And so my recommendation with Chief was to really brainstorm some ideas, look at some of the best practices, and see if we can submit that to our legislators to push through. For example, we talked potentially added funding for scholarships for educational institutions who train officers. So I would love to see us really actively participate in that for public safety. And then the last thing, there's a lot obviously about water conservation and planning. So they presented about the water conservation element that must be included in the general plan by December 31st, 2025. And so we've got some water planning going on. This is probably more strict than we have. We have to talk about the effect of existing development on the demands in infrastructure, reducing demand from future methods of how water is used.
No more detention basins.
Yeah, reducing demand of existing development, and the municipality as a whole modifying operations to reduce our water consumption. So, and there are the programs we talked about is the RIP to Strip or whatever that can be encouraged, and there's funding for that. Yeah, there's flip and rip, and they mean the same thing. So, lots and lots about those topics. I think it's gonna be really good to be able to sit in those rooms. They're both the legislative, the LPC, and the board meeting are via Zoom or face-to-face. I'm going to plan to try and be face-to-face as much as I can. I think it's more effective. We have 3 votes, so currently Mayor and Corey and I have the votes. So if you want to be involved in any of these issues, I suspect these will probably occupy the agendas for the next, well, obviously for this session. So that is my report.
Great, sounds busy. Sounds like you need to do a brain dump first and then go
I just
start
did.
retaining all that.
Yeah, now it's with all
Yeah,
you.
that's right.
There was your brain.
It's good stuff, though.
Yeah, it is. It's good info. Okay, Theron, thanks, Jessica.
Just one item, Sean and I are going to meet with a mountain bike trail designer on Friday down on our 30 acres, is that right? 30 acres down in the south end of town. Is that transaction of that actual land been made, or is that just
It's supposed to happen with the recording of the first plat. We had the pre-con today with them, so that'll be in the next
so it's coming close?
few months.
Okay. Anyways, we'll report on how that goes and what this designer thinks as far as the feasibility of a mountain bike trail.
Are you talking about the preserve?
No, the 30 acres, it's part of the Mapleton Village that
Oh.
we're dedicating to us.
That we just got.
It'll just be a series of trails, yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, Theron. Leslie?
No update.
All right, Jim?
Nothing significant other than we'll probably be coming back to the city for approval. We have an offer, Sumwa has an offer to purchase this property that Sumwa purchased, and at least most of the members, 7 cities within the Sumwa organization, Mapleton being one of them, acquired a parcel of property over 20 years ago that's in Utah County. But basically, we purchased as one of the 7 cities for an amount for in excess of $6 million. For some reason, we've been trying to market the property, and the best offer we've been able to get is about $5 million, a little over $5 million.
Do you know? Do you remember how many acres it is?
Yeah, it's quite a few. It's
Well, don't worry about it.
yeah, and it has a bunch of wetlands on it.
What was the purpose of the land?
The original, there's 140 acres, or no, 240 acres.
240.
240 acres. There's a bunch of wetlands on it. It's right on off of Utah Lake.
I was gonna say around the lake, isn't it?
South
And-
side, yeah.
And so, but the problem is that we've been trying to market it. We got it appraised, and the appraisal came back in at about that same amount. And so,
Do they have it listed on the market right now?
yes. You do?
There you go.
Oh, well, yeah, he needs another estate.
Why did they buy it originally?
Originally, it was purchased with the expectation that we were going to, the possibility that we were going to have to put in a water sewer treatment facility.
Oh, Suma.
Yeah, and that the cities would be able to utilize this property for that, for the benefit of all of those cities.
Okay.
But with everything else been going on, including everything that's been going on in various cities, it became obsolete for that need. So we want to get rid of the property. And so ultimately, we're going to come back and make that decision. We'd get 1/7 of that total purchase price, And so it's not a small amount, but unfortunately, it's not a 20% return on our investment like Dallas always gets. So,
Wow.
Money's low, is what Dallas is.
That's usually 3 months.
yeah, I didn't include his Bitcoin investments.
Yeah, right. Oh, my word, we're gonna get that in pounds.
You should get it in pounds.
Camille, thanks, Jim. Corey.
Hey, our next community event is our Christmas lighting, and that's on Monday, November 29th.
Jeez.
So it's coming up in a month from now.
November 29th.
Kudos to everyone with the community. Did a great job on the Halloween event that took place there in the park, and pretty cool to see throughout the week watching parents and kids as they walk that sidewalk and look at the different scarecrows, et cetera. And hopefully the weather will give us a couple more weeks with those. But anyway, next one, November 29th.
We had the pumpkin thing at the pumpkin patch.
Pumpkin patch, yep.
That was good. There's probably more people showed up this year than ever have. So that was good.
The community cleanup is this evening on Saturday. There will be dumpsters here.
Should I ask where the Leon sign's gonna go this year?
Open that can of worms, huh?
It's gonna be like Finding Waldo, so we're gonna just put it somewhere. You gotta go find it. Yes. And then we're gonna make a website, and then like you can go on there, and the winner that finds it, gets a prize.
To note on that, we've had a couple of residents reach out to us in this last week, interested in coming and help putting some more colors to it and just fixing it up a little bit, so.
Colors to what?
What's that? Yeah, just to make it look a little better than it has.
Are you
been in the
serious?
past. Yeah.
They emailed that?
They contacted us and said, hey, would you allow us
What did they say?
Would we allow them to come and just to fix it up a little bit? make
Heavens,
it look
no.
better?
We're gonna change it? No. Who's willing to go through that rat race?
Are you talking
What's
about
that?
the Leon sign? Or are you
Yes.
talking about the Mapleton sign?
No,
Yeah, that's right, there you go.
no, you're talking about the Noel sign, right?
Talking about the Noel sign, yeah. They just want to come in and touch it up a little bit, so
How
they
dare
volunteered
them.
there.
Refurbish it.
Refurbish it, yeah.
To make it say something else?
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
I'd rather talk about the HOA.
That's right.
Wow, that's bad.
All right, well,
But yeah, we'll start seeing that there in the next few weeks, and then the next month, our Parks Department in there setting up everything for Christmas, so.
good. Excellent. Anything else?
I will bring back up the dumpsters. In the years past, it's been great to have the dumpsters, but it seems like the community fills them up Friday night.
They're usually, solid waste is usually pretty good to keep them.
Yeah, I'd say let's get them on retainer to empty them first thing, or swap them out. Yeah, but
That's just kind of, yeah.
it's just that the last couple of years, it's been a few hours before they have, and so people are just sitting out there with their trucks, not knowing what to do with all their stuff.
Yeah, basically, it sounded like the Saturday morning, they're full before it.
Yeah, they're full
Sunlight.
before we even get the community coming to the dumpsters, they're already full.
How many, we had 3 out there?
There's 3, gonna be 3.
Yeah.
Do we
They're bringing them Friday afternoon.
do we bring some more in? Can we get more? I know they,
I can ask him.
maybe we bring in 6 instead of
Yeah,
couple in.
I think it would be a,
I bet if they brought them in late Friday afternoon, would they fill up?
right,
Will.
yeah,
I wanted to bring them Friday morning, I meant, bring them Friday afternoon, that'd be full.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's
The
what we do.
later Friday, the better, but if, I think it'd be up to them if they want to provide more versus coming Saturday morning more frequently to switch them out. I'd say it's up to them.
Excellent. Go ahead. Yes, we'll look for a motion to close.
Motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Jones, second by Councilman Carlson. All in favor?
Garrett, yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm gonna change.